Hello and welcome back to another episode of You Want to Do What. Today we've got Will on, and Will specialises in blockchain within law. Hi, Will.
Hi Dan, how are you?
Great, thank you. How are you?
Very well, thank you. A little bit warm in Bath here. It's about,
Yeah.
yeah, it's feeling toasty.
It makes a nice change, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. I'm enjoying it.
Well, should we jump straight in then? Do you want to tell everyone a bit about what you do?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm a lawyer and I specialize in the very, well, for now, niche area of blockchain or distributed ledger technologies. My background is that I started in a city law firm, one of the big ones, and worked there for 4 years as a banking, so financial services type lawyer. And then I moved to the south of France for 4 years in an interesting career derogation. There was a lady involved, and it was meant to be just 1 year. It ended up being a few more than that because it turns out that it's really nice in Montpellier. And so who knew, right? And so I got admitted to the Montpellier bar as their first solicitor, which involved, if you know anything about doing anything in France, it involved an awful lot of paperwork and shrugging, because there was like, but it's not possible, and it is possible, and it's not possible, and there's a lot of that. And then, I was sworn in and got a job working in France by emailing every lawyer at the Montpellier bar, which is over 1,000. By a lot of copy. It took 11 hours to copy and paste a lot of email addresses, and invited everyone that would meet me for a coffee or a lunch, and got about 150 replies,
Wow.
45 coffees and lunches, and two job offers, one of which was with a big national law firm called Fidel in France. And so I joined their corporate finance practice in Montpellier. And so I was traditional venture capital lawyer and structured finance with the Paris office. So I worked with a lot of tech companies. And one day a partner came to me and he said, "What do you know about blockchain?" And I said, "Diddly." And he said, "Well, you need to know a lot because it's going to be really huge." So I did what everyone does in that situation and Googled it and didn't understand anything. And then thought, okay, went to Amazon, what are the top books? Because I like to read a lot. And so I just started reading books about it, and then completely fell down the rabbit hole and became a convert into the blockchain tribe, and then decided that was all I wanted to do as a lawyer. But convincing law firms to hire me to do that was difficult, to say the least. We came back to the UK in 2018. I actually had a little girl along the way and wanted to be back near family. And I had a job as a corporate slash blockchain lawyer that turned out to be very much a corporate lawyer. And so that didn't really work out. And then another one where I was allowed to do a bit more blockchain. And finally now where I am at Stevenson Law, which is a small, so we're 25, I'd say boutique law firm, 25 lawyers, all without blowing my own trumpet, but fairly competent in what we do. And Alice, who's the founder, is a bit of a sensation. She started a movement about being different as a law firm, and she's just unleashed me. So it's now all I do, and I only started in January. It feels like a lifetime, and it's been super exciting. That's, I guess, a little bit about me to date.
I love the fact that you're specializing in blockchain because that's such a, it's a buzzword at the moment, isn't it? Everybody's talking about
Yeah.
blockchain and how it's going to affect the world. But I I still don't really understand what it is. I've read
Oh, I'm
about 100
so
articles,
glad you asked me that.
but
Is it
like
Dan or Daniel? Sorry, I don't know. I want to call
Dan's fine. But
Dan.
but
Perfect.
what actually is blockchain in your simplest, layman's terms? What is blockchain?
Are you seated comfortably? Okay, so I'm going to tell you a little story because as humans, we absorb information best when it's told as a story, and in the abstract, and it is a bit abstract, it's quite hard to digest and figure out what's going on. So, the story of blockchain is that around about 2007, 2008, there was something called the credit crunch or the financial crash, which, if you're old enough to remember, was a bit of a disaster, with banks being over leveraged or basically buying too many of things called collateralized debt obligations, other instruments they didn't understand, and losing an awful lot of money and causing the real estate, or being involved certainly in the real estate housing market collapsing. People lost a lot of money, a lot of jobs lost. I'm sure you know all about this. So there were a group of people that at this point got together and thought, well, hang on a minute, these banks have an awful lot of power. And if you didn't know this, Dan, something like 96 or 97% of all money that is created by banks when they lend.
Wow.
And actually only 3% comes from the government or is centrally issued. So it's the whole way that our society or our economic system works is by banks, so what's called commercial bank lending. And they're unelected institutions. They have an awful lot of power now, a lot beyond what their original remit was of just looking after our money. And so, yeah, these guys got together and said, look, well, we want to create a financial system that would work without these unelected intermediaries as banks. But there's a real problem with that, and it's called the double spend problem, which is that if I was to give you £10 now, let's imagine for a wonderful moment that we're in the same room, and I was to give you £10 in cash, there's no question that I can't then give that to anyone else. It's definitely transferred from my property and my ownership into your hands. With digital, it's a bit different, because with digital, everything digital can be copied easily, right? So with an email, if I send an email, I'm actually not sending the original, I'm sending a copy of that, and the original stays on my hard drive. And you know how easy it is to copy photos, and everything's very easy to copy if it's digital. So with money, we trust the banks, at least still, to debit my Monzo account and credit your Coots account or whoever it is that you bank with. That we trust them to do that, right? So if you get rid of that intermediary, if you get rid of that bank, then how do we know that I don't send you £10 and immediately send another digital £10 to someone else or someone else? Okay. So you need to create a technology that replaces the trust, or the trust gap, I should say, between us, because we've never met. You need something that will bridge that, right? So they came up with this idea of blockchain, and the way it works, they got inspiration from 400 years ago, an island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean called the island of Yap. And this island's monetary system was based on something called rise stones. And so the story goes, a group of guys got in a canoe one day and paddled off to an island that was a significant distance away, and found these beautiful green rocks on that island. And they didn't exist on their home island of Yap. So they hacked off big chunks of these rocks, put them in their canoe, and at great expense and pain, paddled them all the way back to their island, dumped them on the ground there, and they were carved into jewelry. And they had value because they were scarce. They didn't exist on their home island of Yap. And then they carved them into these big things called rise stones. So there were these huge, you can Google it, RAI, rise stones, huge discs of stone, massive, not like coins, but really big discs of stones with holes in the middle to be moved, if ever, on using bamboo poles. And the chief of the village would have a huge rise stone outside of his house to show what a big deal he was. And others would have smaller ones. And so if the chief of the village wanted to spend some of that rice stone, the way he would do it is gather all the villagers round. So let's say there are about 40 villagers. He said, okay, everyone gather around. I'm going to buy something now. Listen up. And he said, okay, well, I'm going to take a third of my rice stone and give it to Greg in exchange for his house. I don't know what the names of the people on the island 400 years ago in the middle of the Pacific Ocean was. Let's say Greg. So I'm going to give it to Greg in exchange for his house. Has everyone got that? Is everyone listening? And everyone said, yes, we're listening. So that if the next day one of them was like, you didn't give it to Greg, you gave it to me, everyone else would say, you weren't listening, or you're lying. And so what you have there is something called a majority consensus. So provided more than 20, majority agree, you have a majority consensus that approves that transaction. Okay, so they all agree that that's a valid transaction. If 3 or 4 of them got together and decided to lie, or if some of them died, it wouldn't matter as long as you had more than 20 or so approving and all agreeing. And of course, every villager would remember every single transaction because that was in their interest. So they say, okay, I know who owns that rice stone. I knew the other day he gave some of it to this person. And again, the fact that some of them would forget was covered by the fact they had 40 or so. And that was much better system than having like a village elder who just remembered everything because at some point he would die or he might misremember. So that was the way that they solved that without pens and paper and technology. And so that if you came to the island as a Donald Trump of that era and wanted to buy it, you could interrogate that database or that collection of memories, and you'd be able to trust the information that was contained within because you had this consensus. Okay. So what you have there is you don't need to trust any individual one of those villages. You can trust this majority consensus. So actually it becomes a trustless technology or a trustless system in this case. So that's essentially exactly how blockchain works. It's a distributed ledger. So every one of those people in their memory has a ledger, so a record transactions, which is all a ledger is.
Mhm.
And the fact that it's shared out across all those people, it's distributed. It's a distributed ledger. And so that's exactly how blockchain works. And instead of people, of course, it's computers, or what are called nodes. In the Bitcoin network, at the moment, we have about 23,000 nodes. And each one of those nodes has a very big, it's actually an Excel spreadsheet type thing, that records every single Bitcoin transaction since the beginning of time. So that Excel spreadsheet is now gigabytes in size and very, very heavy. But that's essentially how blockchain works. And so what it means is it means that you don't need intermediaries. You can, so this is obviously how Bitcoin works, is that you can transact without ever needing an intermediary in the middle. And you can always trust the accuracy of the information within the Bitcoin ledger, because it's, if you wanted to match up with all of the others in the network, and it'd be rejected, just in the same way as the villager who pretended he got the right stone would be rejected. Does that make sense?
That is the best explanation I've heard to date of blockchain, and a brilliant little story. Great story.
It is a good story. It is a good story. I've completely stolen it. It was the book it's a book called Bitcoin and the Future of Money by a guy called Dominic Frisby that I highly recommend everyone reads if you want to learn more about it. It's written in 2014, so it's a little bit out of date, but Dominic is a writer for the Money Week. So he's an economist, but also a comedian, which is an odd mix, but it means that the book is a genuine page turner. And that was the first book that I read that I was like, I get it now. So hence I stole it, and I'm repeating it now, although I've just credited him, so it's okay.
So obviously crypto over the last 10, 15 years has changed the way people have viewed things, and crypto's like up and down crazily. But obviously at the moment there's quite a big hype around cryptos and the different cryptos that are emerging, such as Dogecoin and some other ones. How does that affect you? How do you see over the last 6 months, it's been crazy in that crypto world?
How does it affect me in my job, or emotionally? Or okay, so my job. So I generally tend to advise companies much more around the blockchain technology rather than cryptocurrencies. So cryptocurrencies, as you've rightly alluded to, there's thousands of them. A lot of them are fraudulent, or not necessarily fraudulent, but science projects, inventions of from people's minds, and they're highly volatile. Definitely do your homework and make sure you understand any cryptocurrency project technology before buying it, because there's a lot of rubbish out there. So I generally focus a lot more on the underlying technology. And a good way, again, to think about that is to think about blockchain as like the internet, and cryptocurrencies as like internet startups. So they need the blockchain technology to work, but they're fundamentally, you can separate them conceptually. So yes, there's a lot of volatility. A lot of the volatility, of course, is around speculation. So people, market forces, people thinking this is the next gold rush. And Bitcoin, another factoid is that the price of Bitcoin was originally tied to the amount of electricity that it required to create one or mine one. And so it was a few pence or cents right back at the beginning, around 2010. And now it is, through market forces and speculation, the price has shot up, which brings you on to the next really interesting point about what is value and how is value created, because that's something I get all the time, which is, there's nothing behind a cryptocurrency. Why is it worth so much? But that
you could obviously say the same about a bit of paper, which has got a file.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. There's actually, if anything, there's more value in something which is backed by mathematical proof than by essentially a government promise that there's nothing at all behind it now. So so it's definitely interesting. But I never, obviously, I'm not allowed to give investment advice, so I never advise people on buying cryptocurrencies. I'm much more involved in now the world of NFTs, so non-fungible tokens, which we can talk about. And that is, obviously, there's been a huge amount of buzz around that in the media recently. And that is a form of token, so not a cryptocurrency, which is a medium of exchange, but a token, which is has these unique attributes in it. They're completely unique, basically.
So, just going back to your career, why law? What got you into this world in the first place?
Well, it's a good question. So when I was 18, I had the most boring first half of a gap year ever, in that I did so I finished school and I got accepted onto this scheme with, and so I didn't mean to slate this organization, but let's say a top accountancy firm. No, I can tell it was KPMG, which is a large, one of the big four financial services firms. And it was a huge opportunity. 25 people nationally were selected to do it.
Wow.
And so I did it, and I was an auditor. At the age of 18, I went from a village. So I grew up in Marlow. I went to school there, which is a small village community. Went from there to Canary Wharf, and I was put on the Citigroup, which is a huge bank, auditing them as part of a big team. And so I had to take meetings with these like 45-year-old account. I look young now. When I was 18, I looked like a child, and I was in a suit that didn't really fit me. And being from Next, I think, and being and having to go and query these account managers' control procedures, being like, "Are you doing everything properly here? Is it safe?" And them just saying, "Who are you?" And so it was a lot of it was very hard work, and I realised that I didn't want to be an accountant. And so I went to university. I did history and French, which I loved. Got to do a year abroad in the south of France under the Erasmus program, which is one of my biggest regrets about Brexit. I think that's disappearing, and had a fantastic time. And then realized that I didn't want to do numbers, but I panicked because I thought I didn't just want to be a history teacher. So law seemed like a good bet. And I was very lucky that in my final year, I got a training contract from this law firm called Linklaters. And that would have paid, or did pay, for my studies, the GDL, which is the conversion course into law that you have to do if you don't do a law degree. Which is it's an accelerated law degree, so you do a 3-year law degree in 9 months. Although every single law student will say that's not true, because you don't get to go into all the depth that you would do in 3 years, of course. And then something called the LPC, and then I went into practice as a law firm. But it was I always thought that I was okay with whether to think about being a barrister, so I did a mini pupillage. I really enjoyed that, but there are essentially you still need to be privately funded, I think, to be a barrister, because it's very hard to make any money at the beginning. You're self-employed, and you're reliant on solicitors giving you work, and because you don't really know what you're doing at the beginning, no one gives you any work. So you have to you work for older barristers, something called deviling, and it's very well, like, you don't earn very much money doing it. And so when I had the training contract being a solicitor, it was a bit of a no-brainer for me. It was my best option. But yeah, it's that was really how I got into it. And in many ways, I'm absolutely not a typical lawyer. I've done all these personality assessments, and I remember head of HR, one of my firms, saying, if I read this, I would never think you were a lawyer, because I score very, very low on the kind of area that loves it, like loving attention to detail and picking over every apostrophe like that. That just bores me to death. What I love is the more the commercial side, so strategic positioning, and using law as just a small tool in the toolkit when you're working in corporate and the commercial world and the technology world.
Well, that leads us nicely into, what is your average day? What are you actually doing as a lawyer within the world of blockchain?
Gosh, okay. Well, I can tell you. There is no average day. Is what everyone always says. That is true. However, I can give you a run through of a day yesterday, I guess.
Great.
So a lot of what I do, especially as I've been building a practice, is business development. Certainly, so it is talking to businesses about their understanding of. So I have different kinds of clients. And broadly you can divide them into 2 camps. There are blockchain companies or businesses, and that is what they do. So, for example, I work with a company called Minima.global, which is a very exciting new form of blockchain protocol. So like the Bitcoin protocol, it's a base layer, it's a whole new blockchain. And so I advise them on everything from fundraising. So we had a big discussion yesterday about they're working through a fundraising round at the moment, and essentially helping them work through that. They use these instruments called SAFT, Simple Agreements for Future Tokens. So drafting those, making sure, and these documents don't really exist, so we have to make them up by adapting traditional legal documents. So we had quite a long call about that. I had a call with a certain national rugby team yesterday
Ooh.
around NFTs. So these are, again, this idea that you can create like digital trading cards. So if you remember Premier League stickers at school, and what people are doing now is taking short clips. So the NBA has done a lot with this in America, of like someone doing a slam dunk and making that something unique and selling it.
And they have
which
value.
Yeah, so again, it's really like, it's a crazy idea that it's like, well, anyone could watch that on YouTube, or
It's
anyone
basically a
could.
GIF.
Yeah, it's it can be, right? So, and the way to think about it is, well, anyone can view the Mona Lisa, but someone owns it, and it's quite cool to own it. So
Okay.
that's the way you think
Okay.
about it. Do you get it, right? So
Yeah.
so for example, we're looking at maybe doing an NFT of a certain World Cup winning drop kick,
No, how
and
cool.
and creating that, and then selling that. It's not straightforward, and I can't talk too much about it.
It's okay. We can put an early bid in.
But
We're
it's
both big rugby
there's a
fans.
lot of.
We'll put an early bid in.
Oh, really? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well, we can have a chat about that afterwards. But yeah, there's that, and then so it's understanding around giving advice. So I've also created a consultancy called McCaw Consulting, which is to give advice around the technology and the strategic piece of it. So not just the law, but there's loads of law involved as well. So like license agreements, IP rights, who owns what, and then also the law, sorry, regulation. Like, if these instruments regulated? Is it legal to create these things? Are they securities? Do you have to be registered with the Financial Conduct Authority? All that sort of thing.
So
And
if
then,
you sorry to interrupt, if you own one
No.
of these NFTs, is that right?
Yes,
NFTs?
yeah,
So
NFTs, yeah.
you own one of them. Then if somebody wants to use that on any sort of social media or a website or anywhere, does that incur royalties if you own
It
it?
does. Yeah, it
Wow.
does.
Okay.
And what's really, really cool is, so it's for artists, it's amazing. So if you park that idea of the film clip, for example, the easiest example to get your head around is digital art. So art, since the time when people hung paintings in churches, since the Industrial Revolution, really, in the printing press, it's been very easy for people to replicate art, and it's sort of lost some of its value. And what people talk about is the aura of being around a unique or an original piece of art has certainly disappeared in the digital world, because it's just like, oh, it's another JPEG, whatever. Well, now you can create unique, and you might have seen there was an auction. Christie's auctioned off a painting by an artist called Beeple. I think it's $69 million. Someone paid for it in the end.
Wow.
And this was a digital piece of art that anyone could have seen on the screen. But the fact that there was only one of them that saved onto the blockchain, which is, again, this immutable ledger. So once it's on there, it can never be changed or moved. And there's only one of them. So the person that bought that gets this feeling of like, yeah, that's mine. So I might, and you can then choose. You can then tell people, I want to take it off. You want to take it off your site, or I'm happy for people to see it, because actually the value increases the more people look at it and like it. That drives appreciation in the price, which means that then they can sell it at a profit later. So the really exciting thing for the artist is that not only do you get the idea that you get some of the aura back and excitement for the people who come and look at it, and the prices can go up, but also you can get a share of the revenue every time it's unsold. So that's coded into the technology. So at the moment, if an artist sells a physical painting, he only gets paid once. But the way this technology works, actually, every time that's unsold, so the person who buys it sells it at a profit of 300%, because it's gone up in value, then that original artist still gets a cut, which means it changes the whole economy for artists, and means they get a bigger slice of the pie, which is really cool.
That is amazing. Wow, that's like mind blowing.
It is. Oh yeah,
It's changed the way ownership works of like everything almost.
It can do, yeah. And I mean, it's super complex. So I work with the Law Commission, which is the statutory body appointed by government, that advises Parliament on how the law should change to take into account these things. And it's really complicated. So I've given you one example of a digital painting, but actually there are other examples where someone has like painted a BMW. And made it all look really cool, and then taken a photo of that and sold that as an NFT, and then saying that you also get the BMW as well, as like a freebie if you buy the painting. But there's no law around how that works, and if you then on-sell it, how the transfer of ownership works, if it's an assignment or whatever. There's just nothing there, and often there's nothing written in a contract when people do that. It's all just code that actually doesn't cover any of the law. So we're working with them to figure out WTF, how does the law apply? And there's no case law yet. It's all brand new. It's all, the technology is accelerating, or basically far outstripping legislators' ability to A, understand, and then B, actually create law or guidance about how this works. Because every day something new comes out. It's super interesting. So that was the first half of my day. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Yeah, sorry, you're going to say something. I was still going
what an amazing position to be in. You're at the forefront of all this change and these things, and this world of law can't even keep up with.
It's super exciting, and it's not been, so I've got some advice to your listeners about how to get into this position. And it's not straightforward, and it requires a certain amount of perseverance, but it's very doable. And I'll finish about the rest of my day yesterday, because this is why I missed our date yesterday. It was a very cool day. So basically, so when I came back, and I'll be completely honest, because this isn't an ego trip for me, because I've had really challenging times in my career as well. Like, I had pneumonia from working too hard, and that's partly why we left to go to the south of France.
Oh, wow.
Was because I just burnt out completely, and needed some time off, and then gradually got back into it. But basically the desire to specialize in something that no one else really can do was a form of protecting myself from basically having to work all hours as a lawyer, which is often the case. It can be very hard work. I thought, if I can really understand something that few people understand and become an expert in that, and don't forget, expert is a relative term. So it's actually a lot easier to become an expert in something than people realize. And in fact, if you if you go to Amazon, pick any subject and read the top 5 books, if you're extremely keen, read the top 10 books on any subject, you will be a master of that subject. Then there comes practice. But basically, if you read 10 books on a subject, and I've tested this before, I've signed up to go on on debates and panel events knowing nothing about the subject, and just read before going, and then tried it. And it's actually then becomes quite easy. So I'm now an advisor to the World Trade Organization, the World Economic Forum, the Law Commission, all these people, just because 4 years ago, when I came back from France, I had been working as a French lawyer, came back to England, and was basically, they just don't take into account the time that I had spent doing that. And so my pay grade level was really low. And I had a family to support. And so the jobs I saw, everyone was basically offering me that basically it wasn't really working. And so I thought, it's going to take me years to get up to the level that I need to be. And I can't really afford that amount of time. So thinking, okay, well, if there is a subject that I can find, and I was naturally interested in blockchain, if I can really learn about that, and that will become of value to people in the future, I could, in a couple of years, really sort of accelerate my career development to a place where I'm in quite a unique position. I stress this, I had no idea at the time that this would work. I just thought, I'm going to have a go at this and see if it does. And I can give your listeners a bunch of resources for why I believe that would work, and the tools that I used. But that was really where I started, and then it has been a grind. And I was again, to be completely transparent, I was made redundant from one of the jobs, that one that I said that was corporate and blockchain. It wasn't so much, they didn't actually officially, so the official position wasn't I made redundant. They kind of said, this isn't working out, stop talking about blockchain. And me saying, okay, I do just really want to do blockchain. But that was a moment, again, I was like, shit, am I doing the right thing? Because no one's really telling me that this is the right thing to do. But just having this sort of belief that at some point people would kind of wake up, and it would, and also the timing of the technology would take off, and then I'd be in a really good position. And that has now happened. But really just this year, it's suddenly all kind of taking off, which is obviously it's hugely exciting. It's a little overwhelming as well. I'm not gonna lie, but it's super exciting.
Yeah, because you're not wrong. Because obviously, Bitcoin and crypto has always been a little bit shady up until more recently, when some of the larger car companies decide that they are going to take Bitcoin and they're not going to take Bitcoin.
Yeah.
But obviously, if companies are going to accept these cryptocurrencies, surely every company would more or less need a lawyer specializing in that currency and how it's working in their company.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, so more and more large. So to finish off my day yesterday, I'm now actually working with 2 film studios as well from the US. So I won't name drop, but they're ones that you would know. And they exactly have kind of come to the same conversation, saying is we've looked for lawyers and there's no one really that's saying that this is all they do. And I work in a law firm of 25 people in Bristol and Bath, and I'm now working with these film studios in LA, which is just mind blowing. Because again, it's like they now, exactly what you said, they're saying, shit, we don't understand this stuff. One of these studios has 500 lawyers across the world.
Lawyers.
Yeah, which is bigger than a lot of law firms.
And if they're a big
as an internal legal team, and out of all of them,
probably some high-end lawyers as well, some highly educated lawyers.
Oh yeah. I'm working with people that are way better than me. Like I regularly. So the insecurity or the imposter syndrome is something that is a daily challenge, because I'm 36 now and I've been doing this for 4 years now, really. But I will regularly come up against people who are super accomplished in their fields, really competent lawyers, and often who don't like to feel like they don't understand something. So it's a lot of not just ego management, but really making sure that people feel at ease with what I'm talking about, and that I'm not there to kind of pull the wool over their eyes or score a point on them or anything like that, but which is always why I try and start with education and try and just say, look, guys, I didn't understand at the beginning. These are some of the stories and the analogies that help me understand it. Maybe they'll be useful for you too. And actually making it relatable and understandable is the first barrier. Because otherwise, if you don't understand it, they fear it. And with that, it's just, but it's scams. I've read this article. It's, we don't want to go near that. We don't want to be seen. And that's been, kind of a constant battle, definitely.
Sounds like, what a day to be doing, NFTs.
That's why I missed our call.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I completely forgive you. So, but actually, as working in this field, what are some of the personality traits that you see in yourself that really help you to thrive and have put you in this position to, number one, go into a field that you had no clue about a few years ago and learn it to such a degree where companies with 500 lawyers are now coming to you for specific advice?
When you say it like that, it sounds entirely overwhelming.
That's quite cool.
Yes. It does sound quite cool. There's personality traits, definitely, but there's things that are completely learnable. If that is even a word, I'm going to say that's a word. Words are my tool. It's definitely not just about being someone who is naturally confident and able to go and throw themselves into the, lion pit or something and come out winning. There's a process to it. There's a process of and this whole thing started for me with a guy called Tim Ferriss. I don't know if you know about Tim Ferriss.
Yeah.
You know Tim? Okay, so I read his
book.
Yeah. Okay, so I read his book, 4 Hour Work Week, when I lived in Montreal. I think about 10 years or so ago now, and realized then that he's very clever at deconstructing skills and deconstructing I think what he calls the minimum effective dose, about how to get to a high level of efficacy without necessarily just slogging your guts out. And he then launched a podcast, which is the single best education resource that I've ever come across, where he interviews I think it's about 450 episodes now, each about 3 hours long. So that's long form. And he interviews top performers across different fields about what makes them tick, where have they struggled, how do they deal with insecurity, how do they deal with anxiety, do they have a meditative practice, and hint 80% or more of them do have some kind of a regular meditation practice. So It must work, and it does, because I have one. But just like, how do they deal, what's their biggest failure, what's their favorite failure that's then led to a success, all that sort of thing. And I just listen. I've listened to almost all of them. So you get this like direct access. I probably haven't listened to all of them. I probably listened to 350 or so. But you get, so it's like the founder of Netflix, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Jamie Foxx, all these people that are incredible. And the Jamie Foxx one, if you want a starter for 10, is incredible. I think it was the most listened to. But just like how Jamie Foxx, for example, created a party for Puff Daddy, or P. Diddy now, sorry, for $400. That was like one of the best parties, like how he was able to hack that. Stories like that, you're like, okay, the system can be gamed. These are shortcuts, or these are ways you can do things. So I feel like those are my mentors, or people that I learned a lot from. And seeing what they were able to achieve and the kind of backgrounds that they came from, and what they had to overcome, made me think that, yeah, okay, this is possible. And what's in their toolkit? Like, how do they deal with imposter syndrome, anxiety, stress? Because if you can't come up with what like really good ways of dealing with those, then you fail, because it's too hard, it's too stressful. And these things don't go away. Like, life doesn't become less stressful. Whatever you do, life is always stressful, right? And there's always going to be inherent anxiety in trying something new. So how do these guys deal with it? And like, there are common things like going for long walks or running. So exercise is an absolute must. My thing is, I go running most evenings as a way to kind of clear my head from the day and set a buffer between the day and the evening. But yeah, then also having some kind of a mindfulness practice. And you think, like, if it works, and then what's the philosophy that most of these guys know and love? And it's Stoicism seems to be the number one. So I read a book, or several books, by a guy called Ryan Holiday, one called The Obstacle is the Way, about how to reframe obstacles as actually learning experiences. So then things don't become stressful when you come up with a problem or something goes wrong. It's like, okay, well, how can I learn from this and do it better next time? All that sort of thing. So I feel like I've been, and this is the lesson here is, start working on yourself right now, without necessarily knowing what you're doing it for, and without necessarily having anyone telling you that it's working. And that's really, really hard to do. There's a fantastic YouTube video that I think I've watched maybe 50 plus times by I think it's a disservice to call him a motivational speaker, but his name is Les Brown. Okay. And it's called You Gotta Be Hungry. It is the single best 45-minute video. It's a talk he gave, I think, in the 80s. Rosa Parks was there, very famous Rosa Parks. Yeah. About tools and tactics to kind of the hustle and how to overcome obstacles and to succeed. And the key message there is start working on yourself. Success will come. You don't need to know how. You just need to know that if you keep incrementally working on yourself, asking yourself questions like, am I better than I was yesterday? Simple things like that. Like, am I 1% better than I was yesterday? There's another great book called Atomic Habits, which is about this as well. Like, if you can get 1% incrementally better each day, the sum of that at the end of the year will be that you are significantly better. And just start working on yourself. And what you then start to do is then the next thing, which is this rule of you're the average of the 5 people that you spend most of your time with. Yes. Which is an incredible, I don't know if you've come across that, but I love that. It's like, if you want to upskill in any area or areas, surround yourself with people that are doing what you do. And then the question is, well, how do you contribute? How do you not lower their average? So that was really my thinking back to UK, is like, okay, I want to get into blockchain. I don't just want to read about it. I need to hang out with and work with people that are actually doing it. So I joined this great event called the Crypto Curry Club, which is started by a lady called Erica Stanford, which was have a curry and a beer and talk about what you're working on in blockchain. That's cool. And so made some great connections through that. Obviously, the pandemic has shut it down a bit, but Erica is incredible, and she's built this amazing community of people. So my first clients came through that, and then gradually, just through spending a lot of time with these people, repeatedly, like, level up and upskill. To the point where now I feel like I'm not really faking it anymore. There was a lot of that at the beginning, fake it till you make it. But now I feel like I can talk the talk, and walk the walk, because I've spent so much time. So when I'm talking to the technologists, I know that I know the law because I've been talking to Sarah Green and the Law Commission and the FCA. When I talk to the Law Commission, I know that I understand technology because I've been talking with the people that are doing it. So like in each situation, I feel confident for some reason. And that really helps with the imposter syndrome because you've always got something. Sorry, that was a massive monologue.
No, it's fine.
It's good.
For you, what would be the biggest positive you've had out of working in this industry?
I guess, I mean, it's working with people that are beyond the bleeding edge in both the technology. So really trying to change the world.
Cool.
I founded my own company last year because someone was once described as an entrepreneur trapped in a lawyer's body. I think I am naturally highly entrepreneurial. I think it was Tim Ferriss really that planted that seed. Yeah, I founded my own blockchain company last year, and we're working now on a huge carbon offsetting project. So the world is in trouble, as you've probably read, and it will take systemic change from corporates, not just from government saying things, if we're going to become carbon negative and not burn as a world. And one of the key problems at the moment that we have in carbon offsetting is there is a huge amount of fraud. So carbon offsetting is where for every kilo of carbon that you as a person or a company produce, you plant a tree or do something to capture an amount of carbon and put it back in the soil, so that it doesn't accelerate climate change. The problem is that a lot of the credits that are out there that people are buying, so airlines and governments will buy to say, okay, well, we've created 100,000 tons of carbon. There's nothing to show that what they're buying is actually real. And so we've built a blockchain platform that will make it transparent and say, yes, we've planted a tree here, or actually we're working a lot with hemp, which is the Jersey hemp community farmers. That is one of the best natural ways to capture carbon. So it's not just for fun. It's actually really good for other things. Obviously, there are CBD benefits, but it's very, very good at capturing carbon. So we're working with, in fact, we've just signed another big day, our first deal with a band that I can't mention it, I don't think. It's a band that you would know. They're about to go on a world tour of 147 venues. Wow. And they want us to offset their carbon transparently. So we'll add a QR code to tickets. Fans will pay an extra £1 or £2, and then the carbon created by the tour, we will plant a huge amount of hemp and trees to offset that. So I would say the highlight has been using my knowledge and contacts to bring that to life, and we're working with just some incredible people to bring that and to bring that to market now. And then obviously being able to win a client like insert name of film studio or insert name of a national rugby team, that is incredible. As a 25-person law firm, I mean, there were bids from the top law firms to do it, and we were able to win that work from them because of this specialist knowledge. Amazing. So it's super exciting, and I would say that's a good answer.
And on the flip side of that, what would be one of the sort of negatives or less favorable aspects of the industry?
Man, have I got loads. So industry, of my career, or
it would be the world of law, I guess, would be the best one to do it for.
Okay, world of law. So law is still a very challenging profession to get into because, for a number of reasons. It's challenging first of all to get into now because there are always more people than there are training contracts. So it's always going to be highly competitive. I think Linklater said something like 8,000 applications for 120 places. When I did it, it's now a lot more than that. And it's a very grueling process to get into it. And then once you're there, you're required to bill a lot you get fantastic quality of work and great. And this isn't speaking just, about the firm that I work for, but of any big law firm, you're required to bill a lot to pay your salary and also to pay back the cost of your training and etc. So it's very hard work without a doubt. And at the beginning, you don't really know what you're doing, so it's highly stressful because I was on deals of 2 billion plus, often sort of by myself or with a few other people. Not always by design, but you're placed in positions of immense responsibility quite quickly, and that's very stressful. If you can come through it, and not everyone does, a lot of people, and myself included, I chose to stop after 4 years. It's well, to stop at that level and then to change tech. Yeah, it can be a very rewarding career. But I think the sooner that you can get to a level where you understand your subjects, the better. And that only really comes through hard work in the early years. So the first 5 years or 6 years of being a lawyer is hard work without much in the way of reward, in the sense of like, oh yeah, today I got to work for this fantastic client and change their destiny. A lot of it, that's a huge generalization. I'm sure people would disagree on that, but there can be a lot of grunt work involved in getting to the point where you have your 10,000 hours or whatever experience, where you become a master of your subject. And then the goal, of course, is that you get autonomy, which is where you then don't have someone breathing down your neck, but actually you can choose the kind of work that you do and the kind of clients that you work with. And that's where I am now. But again, I've done my time, I feel. But now I really get to kind of pick projects that I work on, ones that are generally trying to improve the world in some way, and the subject that I love.
And what are 2 tips for somebody listening to this and thinking, oh, I'd love to get into this? What is something, 2 things you'd suggest they could do?
Start reading. So there is as I say, I would start off with really yourself trying to understand the subject. So the start of a 10 is that book, Bitcoin: The Future of Money by Dominic Frisby. The next must is a book called Blockchain Revolution by Don Tapscott. I should really contact him and try and get a portion of his sales because I recommend it so much. But then if you read those, and the second one, you can obviously use Audible if you can consume information better through audio. By all means, listen to stuff. But really start to read articles, go to websites like Coinbase, Cointelegraph, start reading articles, interacting with people in the community, join Discord channels. So if you want to learn more about NFTs, one of the top platforms at the moment, this is meant to be a plug, but is wax.io. So like candle wax.io. You can join their Discord channel for free and then start looking at what are people are talking about in the community, what are the upcoming drops. So there's a Spock one coming out, Leonard Nimoy, because it's not official, but like, what are people talking about, what's the terminology they're using? And then when you don't understand stuff, just look it up and be patient and accept the fact that initially you're not going to understand everything, but be curious and just keep reading and keep making sure that you get to the point where you could explain it to your dad, which is always my test, or to someone or my wife. I tried it on my 4-year-old, but that's a little bit too low bar or higher bar. But to get to the point where you feel really like you understand it, and then once you have that confidence in yourself, you can start, basically trying to writing articles yourself, which is the next step. Publishing those on LinkedIn, commenting on other people's posts, starting to build your network. LinkedIn is just a great tool if you want to get into this as professionally. Comment on other people's posts, start to get a dialogue and start to learn from them, attend events if possible, and just do what I did, which is you're the average of the 5 people you spend most of the time with. Spend time with people, learn more, and then it will just kind of come organically. I'm one of the first, I think, to do this. There will be many, many more in the future. So there's a huge opportunity here if you're willing to put in the time now and learn about it. You'll be able, I think you will be able to write your own ticket in the future, because as you said, and I haven't even gone into all the other things that people need help with. Smart contracts is a really big one. So if you can understand how this technology works, there'll be lots you can do.
And would you still go into this industry knowing everything you know now?
So would I go into law?
Yeah, into both, into law and blockchain.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm in love with the blockchain. It's my life, so I'm very, very passionate about it. And I think law is a fantastic skill to have. So when you say like, what do you bring to the table when you're talking to technologists? It's law. So it's a fantastic thing to have a string in your bow. It gives you a lens through which you can view the world. You understand risk, you understand strategy, you understand negotiation, all that sort of thing. It's a fantastic thing to be trained in, that you can then bank and go on to do something else later in life if it's not for you. So yeah, I wouldn't change. I have some issues with the industry, but I wouldn't change the subject. And yeah.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to come on and chat to us. Well, we could literally talk to you for hours. It's
Fine.
super interesting, and yeah, really appreciate your time.
Not at all. Thank you, guys. And yeah, sorry that was mostly me talking, but
No,
yeah, I really
No,
interesting.
enjoyed
it's brilliant.
it. Thank you.
Where can people find you and your law firm you're working for?
Yeah, so I work for Stevenson Law. That's Stevenson with a PH. So if you Google that, you can easily see it. The best place to find me is on LinkedIn. So I don't do all socials because it exhausts me. So I don't really tweet. I do spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. It's something that really is, yeah, it gives a lot back if you're willing to invest the time. So I can share with you my LinkedIn profile. But yeah, my name's Will Folks. I'm wearing a cardigan controversially in my photo, which caused a lot of stir. But yeah, so that's the best way to connect with me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much
Thanks,
for coming
Will.
on.
Not at all. Thank you very much, guys. Appreciate you taking time to.